Hello and welcome to the research update from the University of Sheffield. So we're going to split this presentation between myself, David Randall, Anne Beer and Gemma Arblaster, and I'll just try and actually share the presentation now. Okay. So we're splitting the talk into three parts. So I'm going to talk about the latest technical developments of Nystagmus in VR. And we'll talk about the latest feedback we've received for the Nystagmus Information Pack. And Gemma's going to talk about introducing eye tracking into the clinic and the current student projects that we've got going on. So many of you will be familiar with the simulation app that we've released. So this is released on both Android and Apple app stores. And we took nystagmus patients, tracked their eyes, and then converted that tracking data, put it into VR, so people who don't have the condition can experience what it's like to have nystagmus. And the app allows for, it changes the display shown to the person based on the nystagmus waveform, and it shows the world moving, and that world moving symptom is not something all people with nystagmus experience, but a proportion do, and it's called oscillopsia. So our app is called the Nystagmus Oscillopsia Sim VR. And it's been a successful project. It's been downloaded more than 6,000 times and received almost universally positive feedback from the community. So it's been a great project to work on because it's actually impacted on the people that we do the research for. But this year, because we had the app, we wanted to use it to investigate how different severities of eye movement impact on visual acuity. So we got 50 participants without any eye disorders, got them to read a chart in VR while we imposed 16 different types of eye movement of different severities. And the graph on the right shows, first of all, a linear faint line, and that's our theoretical model, a very simple theoretical model of what we would expect to happen as you increase severity of oscillopsia on the x-axis, and on the y-axis we have visual acuity. The higher the number, the worse the visual acuity. So as you increase the intensity of oscillopsia, the visual acuity decreases. But what we actually found was the amount the visual acuity decreases at higher intensities of oscillopsia, it doesn't decrease as much as we expect from the theoretical model. So that was quite an interesting finding, and we were able to publish that as recently as July in Current Eye Research. And the other thing we've been working on from a technical perspective is to try and stabilize the image on the retina using VR. So we're using the faux VR headset, which is pictured there, and we match the eye movement. So we track the eyes inside the headset and then match the display to the eye movement. And that's best explained by this animation. So without stabilization, we have an object, which is the star, and as the eyes wobble, the object will move on the surface of the retina. So then that's not stable, it's being blurred on the retina. So our stabilization was just to track the eye movement and then move the display on the screen to match that eye movement. So then the image on the retina should be stable and it should be clearer. So that was our theory, that's what we tried. Unfortunately, we didn't see any benefit in the patients that in the volunteers that we had, which was only a small number of volunteers, so we can't be conclusive that this was the case for all people with oscillopsia. We do need to test it in people with oscillopsia who've only just got acquired nystagmus. But we haven't been able to do that just for ethical reasons. But we think that this didn't work because the brain can feel the eye moving, and so therefore the brain expects the world to move with that eye. And it's not doing, because we're forcing the same image to be displayed, to be on the retina. And that's equally disorientating as the oscillopsia itself. So that wasn't the hugely positive outcome we were expecting, but there were some positive outcomes from the study. First of all, the VR environment was found to be very comfortable for the participants with oscillopsia. They all commented that it was actually more comfortable than being in the real world. And we're not 100% certain why that is. It could be sparsity of information in VR, or the fact that it's pixelated and therefore the movements don't have the same effect if it's pixelated. But the most significant outcome from it is we were quite surprised how reliable the FOV was at tracking eyes, and therefore we are looking to maybe introduce that into the look at a study to try and see if we can introduce that into the clinic. Gemma might talk a little bit more about that later. So that's it from me from a technical perspective. So I'll just pass you on to Anne. Talk about the Nystagmus Information Pack.
Thank you, David. So I'm going to talk about the Nystagmus Information Pack, and many of you might already be familiar with this pack that we've developed. We did develop it, or it became available in 2017, and it was really aimed at patients with nystagmus, their families, teachers that support individuals with nystagmus, healthcare professionals, and really any person who would like to find out more about nystagmus. And we were very fortunate to receive funding from the Nystagmus Network, as well as the University of Sheffield, to be able to develop this pack. And to try and determine what information should we include in this pack, we actually attended with a group of orthoptic students from the University of Sheffield. We attended the Nystagmus Network Open Day in Newcastle in 2016, where we had a lovely opportunity to speak to individuals with nystagmus, their families, teachers, other clinicians, and trying to find out what information is important to include. And one key point was that certainly families and individuals would like more information, particularly when you're given the diagnosis initially. So we've tried to include that in the pack. We also conducted an online survey, which was completed by 233 orthoptists across the UK and Ireland. So based on the information from the open day and the survey, we were able to develop the pack. The Nystagmus Information Pack is free to download from the University of Sheffield website, and you can download it. It's got a number of sections, and each section you can download as a PDF. So just ask for next slide, please. So the pack was developed it actually became available in November 2017. And since we've been quite keen to evaluate how useful is this pack, and we've had a number of questions that we really wanted answers on, is how accessible is the pack to the general populations and clinicians? So accessibility might be via, do we make it accessible via social media or other platforms? And also how the information we provide, how accessible is that for individuals with maybe different abilities in terms of what they can see? We also wanted to find out if the information in the pack was sufficient, and whether it would actually benefit from either more information or maybe different information. And we also wanted to look at the presentation of the information. How can it be improved? At the moment, it's sort of available to download in PDF format, but could this be better? So in early 2020, we were fortunate to receive funding from the University of Sheffield, where the funding allowed us to recruit a student to develop and conduct an evaluation project. And we recruited Martha Folds. She is a student and she's actually got nystagmus herself. So she's been wonderful to work with because she's very engaged in the project. And she was able to develop an ethically approved anonymous online questionnaire. And Dr. Helen Griffiths, Gemma Arblaster and myself, we very much supported Martha in this development. And if I could have the next slide, please. So sort of in spring, we were able to disseminate this online questionnaire, and we did it via social media announcements. And we also contacted members of the British and Irish Orthoptic Society and a number of charities, including the Nystagmus Network. And we were also able to contact quite a few ECLOs. So that's eye clinic liaison officers. And we're very, very pleased to report we've now finished the data collection, and we've actually had 160 responses to the questionnaire. We've had responses from clinicians, from individuals with nystagmus, families, and teachers that support children with nystagmus. And the responses have been from all over the UK and Ireland. We've also had responses from US, Canada. We've had a few from Europe. We've had one from Asia, and we've even had one from New Zealand as well. So we feel the responses, are very diverse and hopefully will give us some very valuable information. So the stage we're at now is that we need to start analyze the questionnaire data. I've just put in this little yellow speech bubble sort of a couple of comments that I've already seen within the data responses. So one sort of comment is, overall it's great, but better awareness of it is needed. So basically, we probably need to find a better way to make it more accessible and maybe shout more about it, that is actually available. And also there were comments that like different modes of presenting the Nystagmus Information Pack. So for example, rather than you could just download it as a PDF, could you maybe present a video, or could we do some form of audio? So obviously we'll have to have a look at the data in more detail. And once we've looked at the data, it will enable us to enhance the content, and it will also enable us to think about different ways of improving accessibility. And once we've sort of revised our Nystagmus Information Pack, the aim is that we hope to be able to present it to you at another Nystagmus Network Open Day, and also we wish to publish our findings. So that's thank you for me, and I'm now going to hand over to Gemma.
Hi there, everyone. So I'm going to update you on what's happening on the eye movement recording side in Sheffield. So we have the Eyelink 1000 Plus, which is a piece of equipment that allows us to record eye movements in a lot of detail. And we were able to purchase this equipment due to an education grant and also a grant from Nystagmus Network. But where we've had this piece of equipment in Sheffield has been in one of our university labs. And it sounds very glamorous, but actually it's a very small room off a corridor that's quite isolated within the university. So due to COVID and all of the changes that are happening at the university, that's meaning that we can't access our university spaces and we can't use pieces of equipment in very small spaces with large groups of students. So this has prompted us to have a discussion with the eye clinic here in Sheffield, and we've actually moved our Eyelink down into the eye clinic. So in the eye clinic, it's actually in the orthoptic department at the moment. They see a range of different patients in orthoptics. They can be patients with nystagmus, but it can also be patients with... It can also be patients with different types of eye conditions like strabismus or squint, where one eye turns, different eye movement conditions, and we run specialist neuro-ophthalmology clinics. And at the moment, we mainly see adults in Sheffield, although we do still see some children in the eye clinic there. And the hope is that we can actually still continue to run our student workshops, even though the Eyelink is now down in the eye clinic rather than in the university. So even though this has kind of come about through COVID and all of the changes we've had to make, we're actually really positive about this move, and we're really excited that hopefully this will allow us to explore greater clinical use of the equipment. We'll be able to continue to work with students using the equipment and also to plan other research projects. And certainly there's great interest in the equipment, not just from the ophthalmologists that deal with nystagmus, but the wider ophthalmology community as well. If we can go to the next slide, David. So I'd like to also tell you about the current research that's been ongoing over the last year and what's coming next for us. We've had 2 PhD students using the Eyelink as part of their project, and both of those are writing up at present. So Noor is a PhD student who came to us from Malaysia. She was using the Eyelink as part of her research, and her interest was in cranial nerve palsies. And then I've been writing up my PhD as well. The Eyelink's been a smaller part of my research, but my interest has been in patients with strabismus or squint. But what it's really allowed us to do, having this kind of higher level of research and study going on using the Eyelink, is to explore its wider use, not just in nystagmus, but its wider use in patients with different types of eye conditions. We've also got some undergraduate students who are planning their research at the moment, and due to COVID, these have had to change slightly, but the ones that are very specific to nystagmus and eye movement recording and virtual reality, we've got 2 students working on projects, literature review based, mainly involving the virtual reality. So we're excited to be bringing the undergraduate students into the research that we're currently working on. So I think I'm going to finish as well. This is just to say a big thank you from all the Sheffield team. Really, for the future, we are hoping to publish the work that we've already done. And we're really excited about building the clinical side. The orthoptists who are lecturers at the university also work as clinicians. So we've always had that joint clinical and research interest, but we see it as a really positive move that we can build these clinical links more. We're also keen to apply for further research funding, so we'll be looking at all of the relevant grants that we can apply for, because to keep the research growing, we'd like to grow the research team, we'd like to add to our team, and those research grants and students that will hopefully join us for future research will hopefully allow us to keep working on nystagmus and also other eye movement conditions as well.